Hi, my name is Ajay Solanki and I'm going to do a quick walkthrough on DoAzureParallel, which is an R package for Azure. Came out about 2 weeks ago. Uh, Now, if you've been programming on R, specifically machine learning, you would soon hit a bottleneck with the compute of your laptops. You would have moved from writing your code in R to using certain parallel constructs or which are provided by the R package, specifically parallel, DoParallel, and parallel map, which would give you the flexibility of using some of your multi-core resources and having trying to run your code in parallel. But you soon will realize that you would need a lot more compute power. So most data scientists which are programming on R would want something like a 1 terabyte RAM machine, which apparently is not provided by most of the laptop vendors today. So what do we do? The next best thing would be to start using clusters, or probably you would run your code on Hadoop with Spark and a huge Hadoop infrastructure. Well, that has its pluses and minuses. But having let's not get into the details in terms of what to use and what not to use. But from my R session, I would really want to start tapping into infrastructure resources provided by, let's say, Amazon or Azure. Now, in that case, what I would really want is the ability to kind of spin up machines on the fly with the prerequisite softwares which are installed on it. Give it off the workload from my R script and say, hey, go and start executing this code of R in parallel, and come back and tell me in terms of how they performed and give me the results once they're done. So basically all the simulation. And so what DoAzureParallel does is basically a lightweight R package and kind of built on top the Azure Batch Services, which is a job scheduler that kind of allows you to easily spin off Azure compute resources straight off your R session. Give it give it our scripts, using the for each loop, and say, hey, go ahead, execute this code in parallel and kind of come back to me with the results. It's as simple as that. uh, Want to go into certain specifics on DoAzureParallel before diving into the code side of the story. And what I'm looking at is the specific DoAzureParallel. So it's not something which is new. Parallel programming in parallel constructs in R or any other machine learning suite of tools is available since quite some time. DoAzureParallel, however, was built with the intent to use the Azure infrastructure of compute. It supports the parallel for construct. Now, you may argue that fine, it gives me the parallel for construct. I would really want it to kind of get it to the point of using apply function of lapply, rapply, and sapply. Apparently, I'm assuming that's going to be work in progress. So DoAzureParallel uses the Azure Data Science Virtual Machine, which comes with a pre-canned set of software for you to kind of spin up your R code, and there you go. Going into specifics, code. Now, once you're done with the code, you would, getting into code specifics, you would basically go ahead and generate the cluster config. Just give me a minute. Okay, so the code is fairly simple. You end up using your library or DoAzureParallel, which I'm assuming you would already download it and it's there for you to use from your R session. Once you're then done with that, you would be going ahead with something like a generate cluster config, which ideally is just going to give you an empty pool config.json. So let's run through in terms of what we are talking in terms of what do we want. Okay, so the pool config.json it's a pretty straightforward one. So you kind of go ahead and mention some detail of your batch account, like what's the name, what's the key, what's the URL. Obviously this key which I'm showing here is obviously not working for some reasons, because security reasons. I'm not going to kind of give up my keys. Important things: the name of the pool, the VM size which you want to kind of use. Here I'm using a standard D2V2. The max task per node, I can decide to run 1, 2, 3. Pool size, whether it's basically one, minimum, maximum, auto scale formula. The R packages which I want to kind of load into each of the instances when when I'm running my code. I can either do it out here or I can do it as a part of the code. The storage account, and that's it. So once you're kind of done with, once you're kind of done with writing your, next you fire up your make cluster, which is going to take some time. It's going to provision, the number of nodes which you kind of asked for. Once you're done, you're going to go ahead and register the Azure pool, the pool with Azure. So it's kind of start showing in the portal, Azure portal. This is some function which is just going to return 110, and it's going to be running on each one of them. And you have get power workers, number of iterations, and this place where you actually go ahead and run your for each. This is where he's doing the processing, and you stop the cluster. So having said, let's go into the demo. Pretty straightforward. So here I'm just going to go and say, oh, I would want you to go and spin up, and the pool config is already set. And if you would want to take a look, I've given this myr pool as the name, and I'm using standard D2V2. So let's go fire it up. And here we have fired it up. What happened? We have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. So I kind of bundled up with the pool config. It was lying in a separate directory, so I've kind of set the R session to my working directory, to the source, which is currently C test code. Let's go fire it up once again, and hopefully this time we assume it's going to work. So here it's booting up the nodes, which will probably take some time, and we'll come back once the nodes are up and running. Hey, so basically once you kind of fire the make cluster, it's going to go boot up the new nodes, and so this probably takes some time. So I've kind of jumped the time, not kept you waiting. At the same time, you can go back to your Azure portal and see if the corresponding pools have kind of come up. So let's take a look at that. So here I'm looking in ZSMAT. I'm hoping, yeah, my pool, our pool is up. So it says, all right, fine, your total nodes is running 2, and currently the status is idle. So let's go ahead and get these instances to do some work. So first, I'm probably just going to go register. That's the syntax which is given there. I'm kind of amazed that in spite of, so I'm assuming this kind of does. So here I'll go ahead and make sure this function is in the memory. And now I'm saying, okay, the get power workers, it gives me the number of workers is like number of instances which are running 2. Now this is a stage where I go ahead and fire up my sum function, and here it's going. So it's going to go spin up. The instance is already up and running. It's pushing the code, plus it's getting the corresponding packages to run. And the R package which I mentioned here is Gran, GitHub, Parallel, Random Forest, MLR. That's probably because it's for my future next demos. Yeah, I mean, you may kind of come back telling me that, hey, I don't want to kind of load my RPack. So you have the option of having these instances up and running at all given point of time with the corresponding packages. So you really wouldn't want to kind of go ahead and do this over and over again. Now, having said, we've kind of got our results from the corresponding. So basically, this function out here just returns 11, and we've got 11 coming out of both the instances. So if you kind of come back and I say, okay, it's already gone past the running stage, so it's going to go back to idle. So we'll try to fire up another query just to make sure that this time it's doing something. So let's say I would want to basically fire this up again and say, all right, go ahead and do some work. So this time around, yeah, you can see that it's actually green, so it's started running the code, and this time probably it come around much faster. Sorry, the portal takes a little longer for refreshing. By that time you would have missed. So having said, yeah, it does the job, it runs the code, and that's the idea, just to kind of give us a sense in terms of how to go ahead and write your own code. So in place of some function, you're going to write your code out here, and this is where you're going to run this in parallel, and that's a step one for the demo.